You need to be able to protect yourself.
It's a basic constitutional freedom.
Guns need to be controlled.
We cannot just blindly restrict.
From a foreign perspective, they are out of hand.
This is a Ranger News special report. I'm Daryle Spiller, reporting at the University of Wisconsin Parkside. On Monday, December 2nd, 2019, a little after 10 a.m., a lockdown announcement rang out at Waukesha High School. Unfortunately, this was no drill. A Waukesha police officer inside the school shot a 17-year-old who pulled the gun in class. Now let's go to a news conference where the police chief of Waukesha, Russell Jack, shares more information.
The school's resource officer immediately responded to the classroom. The SRO, school resource officer, made efforts to secure the classroom by getting the other students to safety.
After every major shooting, legislators, political commentators, and practically everyone is quick to blame the other side for these terrible tragedies. Some blame violent movies or video games. Others argue that mental health support needs to be reevaluated. Some are relying on thoughts and prayers, and many debate either guns or people are the problem. America is divided. Now in this special report, let's discuss some pros and cons of gun control. To start off, here are some pros that others are saying about stricter gun control. There would be less likely chance for gun violence. Roughly 16,459 murders were committed in the U.S. during 2016, and 73% were committed with firearms. There would be less suicides, a decrease in accidental deaths. Legally owned guns are frequently used by criminals or taken by a friend or family member. The overall crime rate would decrease. Citizens would feel more safe, and simply put in 3 words, Columbine, Parkland, and Las Vegas. Here are some quotes about this side of the argument. Beto O'Rourke states, "If we're able to pass mandatory buybacks and I'm able to sign that into law, then I fully expect our fellow Americans to turn in their AR-15s and their AK-47s. He also said that there would be a criminal consequence if people were to persist in holding onto their weapons. The American Medical Association says, gun violence is a public health crisis. In a study published by the American Journal of Medicine, author Aaron Gritchte said, when considering that America has the most guns per capita in the world, these results are consistent with the hypothesis that our firearms are killing us rather than protecting us. So, before we're done with this side of the argument, here's what David Hogg, a survivor of one of these mass shootings, had to say.
What we're asking for is a gun licensing and registration system with annual licensing fees. What we're asking for is mental health services in our communities to address the 2/3 of gun deaths that are suicides in mainly rural and suburban areas that are never talked about when it comes to gun violence. And making sure that we're able to have a real conversation about making sure that the people that shouldn't have guns in the first place can't get them, and also reducing the overall demand and appeal for weapons and violence in the United States.
Now, here are some cons that others are saying for stricter gun control. Freedom would be restricted because Constitution protects gun owners and their right to bear arms. Gun control only impacts law-abiding citizens. Criminals not prevented by using them are obtaining them illegally. Gun control is based off of fear, not facts. According to the Washington Times, 48% of people say that they are not comfortable seeing people carry around a handgun in the holster, and that the number climbs to 65% when talking to Democrats. 58% of people say that the average American cannot be trusted with a firearm. The article also points on the 40% of people are afraid that they will be a part of a mass shooting someday. Another side of this is most of the time, guns are used in self-defense. It is stated that people are 4 times more likely to use a gun for self-defense than to commit a crime with one. A 2013 study published by Dr. John Lott Jr. found that in roughly 30 years of gun control bans, homicide rates at a state level were not significantly impacted by the legislation. The states which had the highest rate of gun ownership actually had the steepest drops of violent crime. And similar acts also decline when there are more legal weapons in the private individual's hands. The American people don't want gun control. In a 2000 survey, 67% of people stated stated that they supported some form of gun control. In 2016, that figure had dropped to 46%. It was also stated that 60% of people also said that their gun was the primary ownership to have protection against crime. And 36 say that their guns primarily are for hunting, while 21% say it's for recreational values or target shooting. Of 62 mass shootings in the United States between 1982 and 2012, 49 of the shooters used legally obtained guns. Collectively, 143 guns were possessed by the killers, with about 75% obtained legally. Gun control laws and lower ownership rates do not prevent suicide. Lithuania has one of the world's lowest gun ownership rates, 0.7 guns per 100 people, but its suicide rate was 45.06 per 100,000 people in 1999. The highest suicide rate among 71 countries with available information. Most incidents of violence with guns are mostly self-defense cases. The Second Amendment was intended to protect gun ownership of all the able-bodied men so that they could participate in a militia to keep peace and defend the country against any that would oppose it. If needed, there needs to be criminal control and gang reform. More education is needed on gun safety, not gun control. Legal gun owners protect those from illegal activities and weapon use. According to a recent national survey, there would be less protection from terrorists, criminals, and corrupt political agendas. In the last century, scores of millions of defenseless citizens were slaughtered by a totalitarian regime that first disarmed them. Nazi Germany, led by Hitler, committed mass murder of millions. Historically, genocide follows the confiscation of guns. Former law enforcement officer and retired criminal justice professor Howie Katz states, "Short of disarming every private citizen, we will continue to see the occasional mass shooting by some nut job. But without crime control, the far larger number of 160 or so people shot every day by burglars, robbers, and gangbangers will continue to plague us." Jay Ambrose, a columnist of the Tribune News Service, states, "There are better alternatives, and what's truly absurd in this debate is the demeaning expression gun nuts. In fact, FBI numbers show knives are used to kill 5 times more people than rifles put together, and fists and feet do the deed more than knives." A 2013 survey by the Centers for Disease Control states, "People rescue themselves from crimes on a regular basis with guns, and guns work better than any other safety technique." So, to end this, President Trump has some things to say.
During the first weekend of August 2019, 7 people were murdered and 52 were wounded in 32 shootings in Chicago. And recently they had 78 shootings over a weekend spree and 3 people killed. And Chicago has the toughest gun laws in the United States. That doesn't seem to be working too well, does it?
This just in, Laith Omar, one of our special field reporters, had an interview with a local business owner on this issue. Omar asked him, "What is your thought about people on the left side fighting for gun control?" The business owner replied, "I personally don't agree with them because it is our constitutional right to bear arms. Our founding fathers allowed this to protect ourselves from any harm." He then asked, "Do you think that banning military-styled weapons would be a good thing or a bad thing?" To which the owner replied, "Banning ARs would be a bad thing. It is much harder to conceal an AR than a firearm. You can easily tell if a guy is walking around with an AR compared to a person walking with a firearm." Lastly, Omar asked him, "Do you support a licensing system with a universal background check or search?" To which the owner replied, "I'm completely fine with the licensing, because Americans are still able to buy guns and it can eventually be safer for people who are worried about mass shootings." This is the last information provided from reporter Omar. Gun violence haunts American life and culture. While the statistical likelihood is that many of us will never encounter gun violence, the rising prevalence of mass shootings in the country and the resulting debates make gun violence a constant fixture in the mindset of Americans. It is an unfortunate part of our reality. The threat of guns and gun violence in the form of mass shootings, homicide, and suicide is real. As a result, we must look at all sides of the argument and realize that it's going to be a real change to truly stop these horrific events. Whether you are a diehard supporter of the Second Amendment or believe that guns should be eliminated and banned altogether, hopefully both sides can agree on one thing: that legislators need to work together to fix this awful plague for the benefit of our society. So, what is your opinion about gun control? We are interested in hearing from you. Please click on the link above to state your poll to give a vote. You can click the pro icon if you are for advancing gun control, or you can click con if you would like to avoid stricter gun laws. The choice is yours. This has been Daryle Spiller signing out from Ranger News.